The ballroom at the Arizona Biltmore smelled like gardenias and lies. I stood near table 12, adjusting a napkin for the third time, when Howard's voice cut through the noise from the stage. 200 guests, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing Vivaldi that I had chosen myself 3 months ago, back when I still believed this party was about us. 35 years, Howard said into the microphone, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. 35 years of building an empire. I smiled. That's what you do after 35 years. You smile. The Thornton Holdings logo glowed behind him in blue and gold. I remembered when that logo was just a sketch on our kitchen table in 1992, drawn on a grocery receipt while I nursed Derek and calculated our first acquisition numbers on a legal pad. And tonight, Howard continued, I want to acknowledge someone very special. My heart did something it hadn't done in years. It hoped. I smoothed my burgundy dress, 42 drawers, charged to the household account, and prepared to walk toward the stage. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe he would finally say the words I'd been waiting to hear since I was 19 years old and stupid enough to believe that love meant disappearing into someone else's shadow. My mother, Patricia Thornton. The applause hit me like a slap. I watched Patricia rise from table 1, silver hair perfectly coiffed, black Chanel suit worth more than my first car, her smile aimed at me like a weapon. She had never forgiven me for being poor. She had never forgiven me for being smart. And she had certainly never forgiven me for knowing that her son was a fraud. Patricia took the microphone and thanked everyone. Howard, the board, God, the caterers. She did not thank me. I might as well have been furniture. Lily found me first. Mom. My youngest appeared at my elbow, her artist's hands wrapped around a champagne glass she wasn't drinking. 24 years old, and still the only person in this family who saw me. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. You're crushing that napkin. I looked down. The linen was balled in my fist like a dead flower. Dad's an asshole, she whispered. Lily, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. I wanted to tell her she was right, that her father hadn't built anything from nothing, because nothing was what he had contributed. But I said what I'd been saying for 35 years. Go find your sister. The first contract I signed for Thornton Holdings was dated March 14, 1992. I was 22, 7 months pregnant with Derek, sitting alone in a lawyer's office while Howard played golf. The lawyer asked 3 times if I wanted to wait for my husband. I said no 3 times. I signed 17 times. I created a corporate structure that would eventually be worth $890 million with a baby kicking against my ribs and a calculator in my lap. Howard didn't know about that meeting until 2 weeks later. You did what? He'd asked, holding the papers like they were written in code. I structured the holding company. The window for the tax designation was closing. You're not a lawyer, Olivia. You're not even an accountant. I have a degree in accounting from Arizona State. That's not a real degree. That's a participation trophy. I swallowed that, just like everything else. The criticism, the dismissal, the systematic erasure of my contributions, until even I started believing I was just a housewife who got lucky. The speech ended. The applause thundered, and then Howard said the words that would change everything. But of course, he added, almost as an afterthought, I should also thank my wife, Olivia, for keeping the household running all these years. Laughter, scattered, polite, but unmistakable. She's our secret weapon, Howard continued. Whenever I need to know where my dry cleaning is, she's right there. Whenever I need someone to handle the little details, the napkins, the flower arrangements, the domestic things, Olivia is my girl. More laughter. So let's raise a glass to the little woman who makes it all possible. Literally little. She's 5'3", folks. She can barely reach the top shelf. The room exploded. I stood there. I smiled. I raised my glass with a hand that did not shake because I had spent 35 years learning how not to shake. I toasted my own humiliation while my husband basked in the adoration, people who had no idea he couldn't read a balance sheet without calling me first. Derek appeared at my side, my son, 32, Chief Operating Officer, Howard's proudest achievement. He looked like his father, same jaw, same cold blue eyes. Great speech, right? Derek said. Wonderful. I need to talk to you tomorrow. Dad wants you to sign some papers, restructuring stuff. What kind of restructuring? Administrative, power of attorney updates, trust consolidation. He didn't look at me. For tax purposes. I had been doing taxes for this family since before Derek was born. I knew what tax purposes meant. Money was moving somewhere it shouldn't. We'll discuss it tomorrow, I said. He walked away. I watched him join Howard at the main table, watched them laugh together, watched my husband clap my son on the back like teammates who'd won a championship. Against me. The party continued for 3 more hours. I smiled for photographs. I pretended not to notice when Nina Vance, Howard's consultant, 41, blonde, sharp cheekbones, leaned too close to my husband while refilling his glass. I'd known about Nina for years. Not the details, but enough to recognize the way she looked at him, the way they communicated in glances like people who'd been doing it for a long time. Enough to know that the wedding ring I bought with my first paycheck at 19, $340 from a jewelry store in a Tucson strip mall, was no longer on Howard's finger. He wore a replica now. The original was somewhere else, with someone else. The guests left around midnight. I stood at the entrance, shaking hands, accepting air kisses. Patricia approached me last. She leaned close enough that I could smell her Chanel No. 5, the same scent she'd worn at my wedding, at Derek's baptism, at every family event where she'd made clear I was tolerated, not accepted. "I know what you've been hiding," she whispered. My heart stopped. "All these years. Did you think I wouldn't find out? I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." She adjusted her pearl necklace. "But my son will, very soon." She walked away. What did she know? The truth was I had secrets, but not the ones she thought. My secrets were buried in a storage unit in Mesa. 3 filing cabinets containing every document I'd ever signed, every contract I'd ever structured, every piece of evidence proving the Thornton Empire was built by my numbers, not Howard's vision. 35 years of proof, waiting for a moment that might never come. We arrived home at 1:47 a.m. I helped Howard to bed. He mumbled something in his sleep and rolled over. I looked in the bathroom mirror. 54 years old, brown hair streaked with grey, lines around my eyes from squinting at spreadsheets, hands that had signed 1,000 documents and changed 1,000 diapers and never received credit for either. I was the woman who had built an empire, and I was invisible. I lay in the dark, listening to my husband breathe, thinking about Mesa, 3 filing cabinets, everything I needed. The question was, would I ever use it? Something was coming. I could feel it the way you feel a storm before it arrives. This time I would be ready. The next morning, Derek arrived at exactly 9 a.m. with a leather folder under his arm. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, opened the folder, pulled out a stack of papers, and uncapped the Mont Blanc pen I'd given him 16 years ago, engraved with "To my son with all my love," and pointed it at the signature line. "Just sign here," he said. "It's nothing." I looked at my son, I looked at the papers, I looked at the pen, and I said nothing. Derek sat across from me with the patience of a man who had already decided how this conversation would end. The kitchen smelled like the coffee I had made at 6 p.m., and before the sun rose over the McDowell Mountains, before I had time to process what Patricia had whispered to me 12 hours earlier, the leather folder sat between us on the marble countertop like a bomb waiting to detonate. "It's straightforward, Mom," Derek said. "Just administrative cleanup." I looked at my son, 32 years old. I remembered the day he was born. March 3rd, 1992, at 4:47 a.m., 7 pounds and 6 ounces, a full head of dark hair. I remembered how he grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go. I remembered thinking, this is the person I will love more than myself for the rest of my life. Now he sat across from me with Howard's eyes and Howard's posture and a folder full of documents designed to erase me. "Walk me through it," I said. Derek opened the folder. The first page was a power of attorney form. "This gives Dad the ability to sign on your behalf for any holdings-related transactions. Saves time. You won't have to come to every meeting." "I haven't been invited to a meeting in 3 years." "Exactly. So this makes it official." I turned to the second document. Trust consolidation. My name appeared 17 times, each instance followed by language that would transfer my beneficiary rights to a newly formed entity controlled by, I scanned the fine print, Howard and Derek as co-trustees. And this one? Tax optimization. The lawyer said it's better to have everything under one umbrella. "Which lawyers?" Derek hesitated. "Fenton and Associates." Fenton and Associates. I had never heard of them. In 35 years of managing this family's legal affairs, I had worked with Morrison Blake, with Patterson Group, with Kellerman and Roth. Never Fenton. "When did we switch firms?" "A few months ago. Dad thought we needed fresh perspective." Fresh perspective. That was the phrase Howard used whenever he wanted to do something I would never approve. Fresh perspective on the investment strategy that lost us $2, $3 million in 2019. Fresh perspective on the consulting arrangement with Nina Vance that cost $15,000 a month for work I had never seen documented. "I'll need to review these with my own counsel," I said. Something flickered across Derek's face. Annoyance, impatience, the same expression Howard made whenever I asked questions he didn't want to answer. "Mom, it's really not that complicated." "Then it won't be a problem if I take a few days. Dad needs these signed by Friday." "Why Friday?" "There's a board meeting, quarterly restructuring. He wants everything in order." Friday, 4 days from now. I had learned long ago that artificial deadlines were Howard's favorite tool. Create urgency, manufacture pressure, force a decision before the other person has time to think. "I'll let you know by Thursday," I said. Derek closed the folder. He didn't argue. He didn't push. He simply looked at me with an expression that was worse than anger. It was disappointment. "You know," he said, Dad told me you'd make this difficult. Did he? He said you've been resistant lately, suspicious. He's worried about you, Mom. We all are. The words landed like stones in still water. Resistant, suspicious, worried. I recognized the pattern. I had seen Howard use it before, on business partners, on employees, on anyone who questioned him. First came the concern, then came the diagnosis. Then came the solution that always, somehow, involved that person losing power. I appreciate the concern, I said. I'll review the documents. Derek stood. He tucked the folder under his arm. At the kitchen doorway, he paused. Mom? Yes? I hope you know I'm just trying to help. He left before I could respond. Patricia arrived at 2 p.m. I hadn't invited her. I hadn't been warned. I was sitting in the living room, reading through the documents Derek had left, when I heard the front door open and the sharp click of heels on travertine. Olivia. Patricia appeared in the doorway carrying a small box wrapped in white paper. I brought you something. She set the box on the coffee table and sat across from me without waiting for an invitation. Her silver hair was pulled back in a chignon. Her cream-colored blouse probably cost more than my first car. Her smile was the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Tea? I asked. No, thank you. I won't be staying long. Won't? She nodded toward the document spread across my lap. Derek mentioned you were being difficult about the paperwork. I'm being thorough. Thorough. Patricia repeated the word like it was a disease. You know, Olivia, I never understood what Howard saw in you. A girl from Tucson with a state school degree and no family to speak of. But I thought, well, at least she's practical. At least she knows her place. I said nothing. But lately, Patricia shook her head. Lately you seem to have forgotten your place, asking questions, making demands, acting as if you have some kind of authority in this family. I'm Howard's wife. You're Howard's wife, because he allows you to be. Don't forget that. She reached for the white box and pushed it toward me. Open it. I unwrapped the paper. Inside was a teacup, delicate, hand-painted, with a pattern of blue roses that I recognized immediately. It was from my grandmother's set, the only thing I had kept when she died. I had given the complete set to Howard's household when we married, thinking it would become part of our shared life. Where did you get this? I found it in storage. There were 6 cups originally, weren't there? Such a shame. Patricia lifted the teacup from the box, turned it over in her manicured hands, examined it like an antique dealer assessing value. Fragile things, she said. They break so easily. She released the cup. It shattered against the marble floor. I stared at the fragments, blue roses scattered across white stone. 80 years of history reduced to shards in less than a second. Oops, Patricia's voice was flat. Clumsy of me. She stood and smoothed her blouse. Sign the papers, Olivia. It will be easier for everyone, especially you. She walked out. I heard the front door close. I heard her car start in the driveway. I sat there for a long time, looking at the broken pieces of my grandmother's teacup, and I thought about what Patricia had said last night. I know what you've been hiding. She didn't know anything. She was bluffing, intimidating, doing what she had always done. But the message was clear. I was being warned. The call from Emma came at 6 p.m. My older daughter lived in Portland now, worked as an architect, visited twice a year. We talked on Sundays when she remembered, which was less often than I pretended not to notice. Mum! Her voice was strained. Did you know about Sedona? My stomach dropped. What about Sedona? I was looking at property records for a project. Your name, Mum, your name isn't on the deed anymore. It was transferred 6 months ago. The house in Sedona. The only property I had purchased with my own money in my own name before I was married. A small adobe cottage on 2 acres with a view of the Red Rocks. I had bought it in 1987 for $145,000 using savings from my first job out of college. It was worth $1, $8 million now. It was the only thing that was completely mine. Transferred to whom? Some LLC, Thornton Family Trust who? Mom, did you sign something? Did you agree to this? I thought about the documents Derek had brought. Power of attorney, trust consolidation. Had there been something before? Something I had signed without reading carefully years ago when I still trusted Howard with everything? I need to check my records, I said. Mom, this isn't right. This is... I know, sweetheart. I'll handle it. Do you want me to fly out? I can take a few days off. No, stay in Portland. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up. I sat in the kitchen where Derek had presented his folder 8 hours earlier. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, and I felt something inside me shift. 35 years. I had spent 35 years building, supporting, sacrificing. I had raised 3 children, managed a household, created the financial structures that made Thornton Holdings possible. And in return, I had been mocked at my anniversary party, threatened by my mother-in-law, and robbed of the only property I could call my own. I pulled out my phone and found the number I had saved years ago but never called. A lawyer I had met at a charity event. She specialized in family law and asset protection. She had given me her card and said, "If you ever need anything." I had kept the card in my wallet for 9 years. I dialed the number. Rebecca Thornton's office. "This is Olivia Thornton. I'd like to schedule a consultation." "Of course, Mrs. Thornton. When would be convenient?" And I looked at the broken teacup pieces still scattered on the living room floor. I thought about Patricia's warning, Derek's folder, the house in Sedona that was no longer mine. "Tomorrow," I said, "as early as possible." That night I found Howard in his study. He was sitting in his leather chair, whiskey in hand, watching the news with the sound muted. He didn't look up when I entered. "I talked to Derek," he said. "He told me you're being unreasonable about the paperwork." "I want to review it with independent counsel," Howard laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Independent counsel. Olivia, we've been married for 35 years. What exactly do you think you need protection from?" "I think I need to understand what I'm signing." "You need to understand?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. "Let me help you understand. You're signing documents that make our lives simpler, that protect our assets, that ensure our children's future, unless you don't care about our children's future." "Of course I care." "Then sign the papers." "Not until I've reviewed them." Howard set down his whiskey. He stood slowly, deliberately, the way he did when he wanted to remind me that he was 6 inches taller, 40 pounds heavier, capable of filling a room with his presence alone. "Olivia," he said quietly, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Or what?" The question hung between us. I had never asked it before. In 35 years of marriage, I had never directly challenged him, never demanded to know the consequences of disobedience. Howard smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Or you might find that the life you built here is more fragile than you think." He walked past me, shoulder brushing mine, and left the study. I stood alone in the room where my husband made decisions without me. I looked at the framed photographs on his desk, our wedding, the children's graduations, family vacations I had organized and paid for and preserved in albums he never opened. On his computer screen, still glowing, was an email. I shouldn't have looked. I had never invaded his privacy before, but something made me lean closer. The subject line read, "Fenton account transfer, confirmation." The body of the email contained a single line, "L. Thornton account funded as requested. $2, 3M transferred." L. Thornton, not Lily. Lily's middle name was Grace, not any Thornton I knew. I photographed the screen with my phone and left the study. Something was coming. I could feel it now, not like a storm, but like an earthquake. Deep, unstoppable, already in motion beneath my feet. Tomorrow I would see the lawyer. Tomorrow I would start fighting back. But tonight I lay in bed beside my husband and listened to him breathe, and I wondered how many other secrets were hiding in plain sight. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old paper. Rebecca Thornton, no relation to Howard, she had assured me twice, sat behind a mahogany desk covered with files. She was 62 years old, silver-haired, with reading glasses perched on her nose and the steady gaze of someone who had seen everything. "Mrs. Thornton," she said, closing the folder she had been reviewing. "I've looked at the documents your son brought you. I've also pulled the corporate filings for Thornton Holdings going back to 1992, and—" Rebecca removed her glasses. "And you should never have been treated this way." She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a scanned document, yellowed, faded, but unmistakable. The original articles of incorporation for Thornton Holdings, LLC, dated March 14, 1992, signed by one person. "Me. You are the sole founding member," Rebecca said. "Your husband's name was added as a managing partner 6 months later in a secondary filing. But the original structure, the one that determines ownership percentages in the absence of explicit amendments, lists you as the 60% majority stakeholder." I stared at the screen. That can't be right. Howard said a lot of things, I imagine. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. "The legal record tells a different story. You founded this company. You structured it. And unless you signed documents explicitly transferring your majority stake, which I have found no evidence of, you still control it. 60%. $534 million of the $890 million empire, I had been told, belonged to my husband. Why didn't anyone tell me this? Because no one wanted you to know." Rebecca leaned forward. "Mrs. Thornton, I've been practicing family law for 31 years. I've seen this pattern before. A spouse, usually a wife, builds something, supports something, creates something. And over time, through manipulation, intimidation, and carefully managed ignorance, she's made to believe she has no power, no ownership, no rights." She handed me a tissue. I hadn't realized I was crying. "The documents your son wants you to sign," Rebecca continued, "would transfer your remaining shares to a trust controlled entirely by your husband and son. It would also grant your husband permanent power of attorney over your financial decisions. If you sign those papers, you will lose everything. And if I don't? If you don't, you remain the majority owner of Thornton Holdings. You have the legal right to call a board meeting, restructure leadership, and remove any officer, including your husband, from their position." I wiped my eyes. "He'll fight me. Yes, he will. He'll turn the children against me. He'll try. He'll make my life hell." Rebecca smiled, a small, knowing smile. Mrs. Thornton, I suspect your life has been hell for quite some time. The only difference now is that you have the power to walk through the fire instead of burning in it. The house was empty when I returned. Howard was at the office. The housekeeper had the day off. I walked through 12,000 square feet of travertine in silence, past the living room where Patricia had shattered my grandmother's teacup, past the kitchen where Derek had presented his folder of betrayal. I climbed the stairs to the third floor, the attic. I hadn't been up here in years. Howard called it storage, a catch-all for things we no longer needed but couldn't bring ourselves to throw away. Christmas decorations, old furniture, boxes of documents from the early days of the company, before we had proper filing systems, before everything became digital and controlled. The attic smelled like dust and cedar. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting yellow light across rows of cardboard boxes. Each one was labeled in my own handwriting, 1992, 1993, 1994, the early years, when I did everything myself because there was no one else to do it. I opened the box marked 1992. Inside were folders, receipts, legal pads covered in my calculations. I pulled out a photograph, me, at 22, 7 months pregnant, sitting at a conference table with 3 men in suits. I was the only woman in the room. I was signing a document. Howard was not in the picture. I remembered that day. March 14th, 1992. The day I incorporated Thornton Holdings. The day I created something from nothing while my husband played golf. Beneath the photograph was a letter. My own handwriting, dated 6 months later. Dear future me, today. Howard told me I should stop playing businesswoman and focus on being a mother. He said the company was his vision and I was just helping with paperwork. I didn't argue. I never argue. But I want to remember this. I built this. I structured the tax designation, the ownership percentages, the acquisition strategy. I did it with a calculator and a legal textbook and a baby growing inside me. Whatever happens next, I need to remember that I was here first. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Olivia, age 22. I held the letter for a long time. 22 years old and already afraid of being erased. 22 years old and already preparing for a war she hoped would never come. I kept digging. In the box marked 1995, I found bank statements, monthly transfers from the company account to an account I didn't recognize, Cayman Islands routing number, no name attached. The amounts were small at first, $5,000, $8,000. By 2000, they had grown to $15,000 a month. By 2010, $25,000. And then, in a box marked 2009, I found the birth certificate. Lauren Elizabeth Vance, born September 3rd, 2009. Mother, Nina Vance. Father, blank. But attached to the birth certificate was a paternity acknowledgement form, signed by Howard Mitchell Thornton. Dated September 5th, 2009. 2 days after Lauren was born, Howard had legally acknowledged her as his daughter. I sat on the dusty floor of the attic, surrounded by 35 years of evidence, and I felt the last piece of my old life fall away. Howard had a daughter, a 15-year-old girl I had never met, never known about, whose existence had been hidden from me for her entire life. The $2, $3 million transfer I had seen on Howard's computer. It wasn't a business expense. It was a trust fund. For his other child. L. Thornton wasn't a mystery. L. Thornton was Lauren. I called Lily that night. Mom? She sounded worried. Are you okay? You sound strange. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Did you know about Lauren? Silent. Lily? Mom, Her voice cracked. I found out 2 years ago. I saw Dad with a woman and a teenager at a restaurant in Paradise Valley. I confronted him. He made me promise not to tell you. He said it would destroy you. And you believed him? I didn't know what to believe. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe it was better if you didn't know. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have. It's not your fault, I said. And I meant it. Lily was 24 years old, caught between loyalty to her father and love for her mother, forced to carry a secret that was never hers to keep. What are you going to do? She asked. I looked around the attic. Boxes of evidence, 35 years of proof. I'm going to take back what's mine. The next 3 days were the loneliest of my life. Howard didn't come home. He sent a text, working late, don't wait up. And then nothing. Derek didn't call. Emma didn't call. Even Lily, after our conversation, went quiet. I spent my time in the attic, organizing documents, photographing everything, building a case that Rebecca would help me present. I ate meals, alone in the kitchen. I slept alone in the bed I had shared with Howard for 35 years. On the third night, Patricia called. I heard you've been asking questions, she said. No greeting, no pretense. I've been reviewing documents. Dangerous hobby, Olivia, especially for someone in your condition. My condition? Howard is concerned about your mental state. He's spoken to Dr. Freeman. They think you might benefit from some time away. A facility in Sedona that specializes in rest. A facility they wanted to commit me, to lock me away somewhere quiet while they finished dismantling everything I had built. I appreciate the concern, I said, but I'm fine. Are you? Because the woman I saw at that anniversary party, the woman who couldn't even hold a napkin without shaking, didn't seem fine. She seemed fragile, unstable, the kind of woman who might do something regrettable. Is that a threat, Patricia? It's an observation. Her voice was ice. Sign the papers, Olivia. Take the rest here. Let the men handle the business. It's what's best for everyone. She hung up. I stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, and I thought about all the times I had been told what was best for me, by Howard, by Patricia, by a world that had decided, long before I was born, that women like me were supposed to be quiet and grateful and small. I was done being small. I went to the attic. I pulled out the box marked 2009. I photographed the birth certificate, the paternity acknowledgement, the bank statements showing 15 years of secret payments. Then I sent an email to Rebecca. I have everything. I'm ready. Her response came in 3 minutes. Board meeting is scheduled for June 15th, the annual gala. I'll prepare the documents. You'll need to be strong. June 15th, 3 weeks away. The annual Thornton Holdings Gala, where Howard would give his usual speech about vision and leadership and success. This year, the speech would be different. This year, I would be the one talking. That night, I found the box I had been avoiding. It was small, unlabeled, pushed to the very back of the attic. Inside was a velvet pouch, and inside the pouch was my wedding ring. Not the ring I wore now, the $12,000 platinum band Howard had upgraded me to for our 20th anniversary. This was the original, the $340 ring I had bought myself at 19 years old in a strip mall jewelry store in Tucson because Howard had said he couldn't afford one. I had given it to him to keep after the upgrade. He had told me he put it somewhere safe. It should have been in his study, in his safe. Anywhere but here, in a box of forgotten things in an attic I never visited. He had thrown it away. My first ring, my first sacrifice, the symbol of everything I had given up to build his life. He had thrown it in a box and forgotten it existed. I slipped the ring onto my finger. It still fit. And I made a promise to myself. By June 15th, everything Howard had taken from me would be returned. The company, the property, the dignity, everything. Rebecca spread the documents across her conference table like a general mapping a battlefield. Here's where we stand, she said. You own 60% of Thornton Holdings through the original incorporation. Howard owns 25%. The remaining 15% is distributed among minority shareholders, mostly silent investors from the early acquisitions. I studied the papers. Numbers I had calculated 35 years ago, now weapons in a war I never wanted to fight. To remove Howard from leadership, you'll need a board vote. As majority shareholder, you can call an emergency session and propose restructuring. But here's the complication. Rebecca pointed to a clause buried in the operating agreement. Any leadership change requires 72 hours notice to all board members. If Howard finds out before the vote, he'll have time to challenge, delay, or sabotage. So I need to keep this secret for 3 more weeks. Exactly, and there's something else. Rebecca pulled out a separate folder. I found the paperwork for your Sedona property. The transfer was executed using a power of attorney you signed in 2019. My stomach dropped. I never signed. You did. Look. She showed me the document. My signature, dated March 3rd, 2019, Derek's birthday. I remembered that day. Howard had brought me a stack of papers while I was preparing for the party. Just routine stuff, he'd said. Tax forms, insurance update. I had signed without reading. I had trusted him. The power of attorney was buried in the middle of legitimate documents, Rebecca said. Classic technique. You signed away your rights without knowing it. Can we reverse it? Possibly, but it will take time, longer than 3 weeks. For now, focus on the board meeting. Once you control the company, you'll have leverage to negotiate everything else. I nodded. 3 weeks, 21 days to dismantle a 35-year prison without alerting the warden. There's one more thing, I said. My wedding ring, the original one. Howard gave it to Nina Vance. I want it back. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. That's personal. Everything about this is personal. She studied me for a moment, then smiled. I know someone, a private investigator. Discreet. If the ring is where you think it is, she can help you recover it. How? Nina Vance has a housekeeper, Maria Santos. She's worked there for 6 years and sends money home to Guatemala every month. My investigator says Maria isn't happy with her employer. Something about unpaid overtime and broken promises. You want me to bribe her? I want you to offer her a fair deal. $10,000 for access to Nina's apartment while she's out. Maria opens the door, you find the ring, everyone goes home. No violence, no confrontation, just a woman reclaiming what was stolen from her. I thought about it. The ring wasn't worth $10,000. It wasn't worth $340. But it was worth something money couldn't measure. 35 years of sacrifice, compressed into a circle of gold. Do it, I said. The operation happened on a Tuesday. Nina was at a spa in Sedona. Ironic, given that she was relaxing in the town where my stolen property sat empty. Maria met me at the service entrance of Nina's Paradise Valley apartment at 2:00 p.m. She was small, middle-aged, with tired eyes and calloused hands. 30 minutes, she said. No more. I nodded and followed her inside. The apartment was everything I expected. Modern, cold, decorated with Howard's money and Howard's taste. Abstract art on the walls, leather furniture, a view of Camelback Mountain that probably cost $50,000 a year in HOA fees. The safe is in the bedroom closet, Maria said. Combination is her daughter's birthday. July 3rd, 2009, 070309. Lauren's birthday. Of course, Nina would use her daughter's birthday. The daughter Howard had given her. The daughter I never knew existed. I found the closet. Found the safe. Entered the combination. The door swung open. Inside were documents. Lauren's birth certificate, the paternity acknowledgement, photos of Howard with Nina and their daughter at various ages. There was cash, maybe $20,000. There were jewelry boxes containing pieces I recognized from Howard's business trip gifts over the years. And there, in a small velvet pouch at the back of the safe, was my ring. I held it up to the light. $340 of yellow gold, bought by a 19-year-old girl who believed in love. It was scratched now, worn, the tiny diamond barely visible, but it was mine. I took the ring. I took photos of everything else. The documents, the cash, the jewelry. Evidence. Then I closed the safe, thanked Maria, and left. In the car, I slipped the ring onto my finger next to the platinum band Howard had given me. 2 rings, 2 lives, one ending, one about to begin. That night, I made a mistake. I was sitting in the kitchen, reviewing documents, when I decided to reach out to Derek. Not to confront him, not to accuse, just to talk. To see if there was anything left of the boy I had raised, buried somewhere beneath the man Howard had created. I typed an email. Derek, I need to see you. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. at the house. Come alone. There are things I need to tell you. Things about the company, about our family, about choices I'd made before you were born. I know you think I'm being difficult. I know your father has told you things about me, but I'm asking you, as your mother, to give me 1 hour, just 1 hour to explain, please. Mom, I sent it at 9:47 p.m., at 10:15 p.m. My phone rang. Not Derek. Howard. Interesting email, he said. His voice was calm, almost amused. Things you need to tell him? Choices you made before he was born? My blood went cold. You're reading his emails? I'm protecting my son from a woman who's clearly having some kind of breakdown. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Rebecca Thornton, the private investigator, the little field trip to Nina's apartment this afternoon. He knew everything. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Olivia. Howard's voice dropped to a whisper. I've spent 35 years building this company. I've spent 35 years making sure everything is exactly where it should be. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me? I founded that company. I have the documents to prove it. You have papers. I have power. There's a difference. He paused. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to sign the documents Derek brought you. You're going to smile and thank me for taking such good care of our family. And then you're going to check yourself into the Sedona facility Patricia recommended for your health. And if I don't? If you don't, Howard laughed softly, then I'll make sure everyone knows about your little adventure today. Breaking into Nina's apartment, bribing her housekeeper. Theft. That's a felony, Olivia. How do you think the board will react when they find out the majority shareholder is facing criminal charges? I couldn't breathe. You have until tomorrow morning, Howard said. Sleep well. He hung up. I sat in the dark kitchen, phone in hand, trying to think. Howard had been watching me, monitoring Derek's emails, tracking my movements. He knew about Rebecca, about Maria, about everything. But he didn't know about the storage unit in Mesa. He didn't know about the 35 years of documents I had photographed and uploaded to a secure cloud server. He didn't know that Rebecca had already filed the paperwork for the emergency board meeting, using a corporate address he had no access to. He thought he had me trapped. He was wrong. I called Rebecca. He knows, I said. He knows about Nina's apartment. He's threatening to press charges. Did you take anything besides the ring? No, just photos. Then it's your word against his. The ring was originally yours. You have the purchase receipt from 1989. Maria will deny everything, and Nina won't want a police investigation poking around her finances. Rebecca's voice was steady. He's bluffing, Olivia. He's scared. That's why he's threatening instead of acting. He said I have until tomorrow morning. Then we accelerate. The board meeting was scheduled for June 15th. We move it up. This Friday, 3 days from now. Can we do that? You're the majority shareholder. You can do whatever you want. Rebecca paused. But there's something you need to understand. Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be at war with your husband, possibly your son, definitely your mother-in-law. Your family will never be the same. I looked at the 2 rings on my finger, the cheap gold band and the expensive platinum, the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming. My family hasn't been the same for 35 years, I said. I just didn't know it. Then we move forward. I'll file the notice tonight. The meeting will be Friday at 10 a.m. at the Thornton Holdings headquarters. You'll need to be there. You'll need to be ready. I'll be ready. I hung up and sat in the darkness, listening to the silence of the empty house. Somewhere across town, Howard was probably celebrating. thinking he had won, thinking his threats had broken me. He didn't know that I had already sent Derek a second message, not through email, but through Lily. A handwritten letter delivered by my daughter to my son, asking him to meet me Friday morning before the board meeting, asking him to listen before choosing sides. I didn't know if he would come. I didn't know if anything I said would matter. But I had spent 35 years being silent, and I was done. Thursday passed in a blur of preparation. Rebecca and I reviewed every document, every strategy, every possible counterattack. We practiced what I would say to the board. We prepared for Howard's objections, Patricia's interference, Derek's potential betrayal. By Thursday night, I was exhausted. I sat alone in the living room, looking at the space where my grandmother's teacup had shattered, and I thought about everything I was risking: my marriage, my son, my reputation, my peace. But then I thought about what I had already lost: my property, my dignity, my voice, my name erased from the company I had built with my own hands. I had nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mum, I got your letter. I'll be there Friday. I don't know what's happening anymore, but I'll listen. Derek. I read the message 3 times. Then I cried, not from sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Friday morning, everything would change. One way or another, I would finally be heard. Derek arrived at 6:47 a.m. I watched him from the kitchen window, his black BMW pulling into the driveway, his hesitation before turning off the engine, the way he sat in the driver's seat for a full 2 minutes before opening the door. He looked tired. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. That made 2 of us. I opened the front door before he could knock. Mom! His voice was hoarse. I got your letter. I know. Thank you for coming. He stepped inside. We stood in the foyer, the same foyer where I'd welcomed him home from college, from his first job, from his wedding, the same foyer where I had said goodbye to him 1,000 times without ever really letting go. Coffee? I asked. Please. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had presented Howard's folder 4 days ago, the same table where I had signed away pieces of myself for 35 years without knowing it. I don't have much time, Derek said. The board meeting is at 10. I know. That's why I wanted to talk to you first. I took a breath. Derek, there are things you don't know. Things your father has hidden from both of us. Mom, please, just listen. I pulled out the folder I had prepared. Inside were copies of everything. The original incorporation documents, the bank statements, the photographs from Nina's safe. I spread them across the table like evidence in a trial. This is the original filing for Thornton Holdings, I said, pointing to the first document. Dated March 14th, 1992. Signed by me, only me. Your father's name was added 4 months later. Derek stared at the paper. That doesn't prove anything. Dad always said you helped with the paperwork. I didn't help with the paperwork. I created the company. I structured the tax designations, the ownership percentages, the acquisition strategy. I did it while I was pregnant with you, while your father was playing golf with clients. I slid another document toward him. This is the operating agreement. According to this, I own 60% of Thornton Holdings. Your father owns 25%. The rest is minority shareholders. That's impossible. Dad controls everything. Your father controls the narrative. That's not the same as controlling the company. I pointed to the ownership clause. Look at the signatures. Look at the dates. This is real, Derek. This is the truth. He was quiet for a long moment. I watched his face, the confusion, the resistance, the slow crack forming in the wall he had built between us. Even if this is true, he said finally, it doesn't explain why you're doing this now. Why you're trying to destroy everything Dad built. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm trying to reclaim what was stolen from me. I pushed another document toward him. This is a power of attorney I apparently signed in 2019, on your birthday. Do you remember that day? Derek frowned. We had a party at the house. Yes, and your father brought me a stack of papers to sign. Tax forms, he said, insurance updates. I trusted him. I signed without reading. I tapped the document. This gave him the authority to transfer my property without my knowledge. That's how I lost the house in Sedona, the only thing that was ever really mine. Mom, I didn't know. I know you didn't. That's why I'm telling you now. I took a breath. This was the hard part, the part I had been dreading. There's something else, Derek, something about your father that you need to see. I pulled out the photograph from Nina's safe. Howard, Nina, and a teenage girl standing in front of a Christmas tree. They looked like a family. They looked happy. Derek picked up the photograph. His hands were trembling. Who is this? Her name is Lauren. She's 15 years old. She's your father's daughter. The silence that followed was absolute. Derek stared at the photograph, his face pale, his jaw tight. I could see him processing the betrayal, the lies, the 15 years of secrets that had been kept from all of us. That's not possible, he whispered. Dad would never. There's more. I handed him the birth certificate, the paternity acknowledgement, The bank statements. Your father has been paying Nina Vance $15,000 a month for 15 years. He set up a trust fund for Lauren. Dude, $3 million. The money came from the company I built. Derek's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the papers. He set them down and stood, walking to the window, his back to me. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. Because I'm not the enemy your father made me out to be. And because in 3 hours, I'm going to walk into that board meeting and take back control of Thornton Holdings. I stood and walked toward him. I wanted you to hear it from me first. I wanted to give you a choice. A choice? You can stand with your father. You can fight me. You can pretend none of this is real. I put my hand on his shoulder. Or you can stand with me. You can help me fix what's broken. You can be the man I raised you to be, not the man your father turned you into. Derek turned to face me. His eyes were red. For the first time in years, I saw my son. Not Howard's protege, not the CFO, not the stranger who had handed me a folder of betrayal. My son. I didn't know, he said. Mom, I swear I didn't know any of this. Dad told me you were unstable. He told me you were trying to sabotage the company. He told me, his voice broke. He told me you never really wanted me, that you only stayed because of the money. The words hit me like a physical blow. Derek. I took his face in my hands, the way I used to when he was small. I have wanted you since before you were born. I have loved you every single day of your life. I stayed because I believed in our family. I stayed because I thought I could make it work. I stayed because I didn't know I had any other choice. He was crying now. 32 years old, chief financial officer of an $890 million company, and he was crying in his mother's kitchen like a little boy. What do I do? He asked. Mom, what do I do? You come to the board meeting, you listen, and then you decide. The confrontation with Howard happened at 9:15 a.m. I arrived at Thornton Holdings headquarters early, wanting to prepare, but Howard was already there, waiting in the lobby with Patricia at his side. They looked like generals awaiting a surrender. Olivia, Howard's voice was cold. I see you decided to ignore my advice. I decided to take control of my company. Patricia laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Your company? Dear, you're a housewife with delusions of grandeur. The board will do exactly what the majority shareholder instructs them to do. I held up my folder. I have the original incorporation documents. I have the operating agreement. I have 35 years of evidence proving that I built this company while your son took credit for it. Howard stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent he had worn on our wedding day. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Walk away now, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. A generous settlement, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. But if you walk into that boardroom, I will destroy you. You've been destroying me for 35 years. I'm still standing. Are you? He smiled. Because the woman I married wouldn't have broken into Nina's apartment. The woman I married wouldn't have bribed her housekeeper. The woman I married knew her place. The woman you married was a 19-year-old girl who believed in love. I stepped closer, matching his stance. I'm not that woman anymore. The elevator doors opened. Derek stepped out. Howard's face shifted, a flicker of triumph. Derek, good. Tell your mother to stop this nonsense before she embarrasses herself. Derek looked at his father, then at me, then back at his father. I saw the documents, Dad. Howard's smile faltered. What documents? The incorporation papers, the ownership agreement, the birth certificate. Derek's voice was steady now, stronger than I had heard it in years. Lauren Vance, your daughter. The one you've been hiding for 15 years. The color drained from Howard's face. Derek, I can explain. You told me Mom was unstable. You told me she never wanted me. You told me she was trying to destroy everything we built. Derek was shaking, but he didn't look away. You lied about everything. My entire life has been built on your lies. Son, don't. Derek held up his hand. I don't know what's going to happen in that boardroom. I don't know what the right thing to do is. But I know I'm done believing you. He walked past Howard, past Patricia, and came to stand beside me. Howard stared at us. His wife and his son, united against him for the first time in 35 years. Patricia grabbed his arm, whispering something urgent, but he didn't seem to hear her. You'll regret this, he said finally. Both of you. Maybe, I said, but at least we'll be free. The boardroom doors opened. The directors were taking their seats. I looked at Derek. He looked at me. Together? I asked. He nodded. Together. We walked into the boardroom, side by side. The meeting lasted 2 hours. I presented my evidence. The documents, the photographs, the financial records. I explained how I had founded Thornton Holdings, how I had been systematically erased from my own creation, how Howard had used deception and manipulation to steal what was rightfully mine. Howard objected. Patricia interrupted. Their lawyers threatened, but in the end, the numbers didn't lie. The signatures didn't lie. The truth, buried for 35 years, finally saw the light. At 12:07 p.m., the board voted, 8-2 in favor of restructuring. Howard was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Derek was placed on administrative leave, pending review, but with my recommendation that he be given a path to redemption rather than termination. And I, Olivia Thornton, was reinstated as majority shareholder and chairwoman of the board. When the vote was announced, Howard stood without a word and walked out. Patricia followed, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down the end of an era. Derek stayed. "Mom," he said, after everyone else had left, "I'm sorry for everything. I know. I don't know how to fix what I did." "You start by being honest, with me, with yourself, with everyone you've hurt." I squeezed his hand. "It won't be easy, but it's possible." He nodded. For the first time in years, he looked like my son again. "What happens now?" he asked. I looked around the empty boardroom, the leather chairs, the mahogany table, the view of Camelback Mountain through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Now," I said, "we rebuild, but this time, we do it together." The Arizona Biltmore looked different at night. 3 weeks ago I had stood in this same ballroom and watched my husband turn me into a punchline. Tonight, 200 guests filled the same space. The same chandeliers, the same string quartet, the same champagne at $200 a bottle, but everything had changed. I had changed. "Mrs. Thornton." A young woman with a clipboard approached me. "We're ready for your remarks whenever you are." "My remarks, not Howard's. Mine." 5 minutes, I said. I walked to the edge of the room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the desert at dusk. The mountains were turning purple in the fading light. Somewhere out there was the house in Sedona that Howard had stolen from me, still in limbo, still contested, but no longer the only thing I had. Lily found me first, as she always did. "Mum." She was wearing a green dress that matched her eyes, her artist's hands free of any jewelry except a simple silver ring. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," I admitted. "Alive. Free. Those sound like good things." "They are." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you. For delivering the letter to Derek. For believing in me when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. You're my mom." She shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. What else was I going to do? "Schwit." Emma appeared next, having flown in from Portland that morning. My older daughter looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, wrinkled blazer, the expression of someone who had spent the last week processing impossible information. "Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. I should have." "You're here now. That's what matters." I pulled both my daughters into an embrace. For a moment we were just 3 women holding on to each other in a ballroom full of strangers, connected by blood and history and the shared experience of surviving a man who had tried to diminish us all. "It's time," Lily said. I nodded. I know. The stage was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was bigger now. Maybe 35 years of shrinking had finally ended, and I was taking up the space I had always deserved. I stepped up to the podium. 200 faces looked back at me. Board members, investors, executives, their spouses. Some looked curious, some looked skeptical, a few looked openly hostile. I didn't care. "Good evening," I said. "For those who don't know me, my name is Olivia Thornton, and I am the founder of Thornton Holdings." A murmur rippled through the crowd. 35 years ago, I sat alone in a lawyer's office in downtown Phoenix. I was 22 years old, 7 months pregnant, and I signed the documents that created this company. My husband wasn't there. He was playing golf. I paused. "That's not a joke. It's the truth." I looked around the room. In the back, I could see Howard standing near the exit, his face unreadable. Patricia was beside him, her hand on his arm, her expression frozen in something between fury and disbelief. For 35 years, I watched someone else take credit for my work. I smiled, I nodded. I played the role I was assigned, the supportive wife, the silent partner, the woman who knew her place. I gripped the edges of the podium. I am done playing that role. The room was silent now. Even the waiters had stopped moving. This week, the board of directors voted to restructure leadership at Thornton Holdings. As of today, I am the chairwoman of this company. Not because I married the right man, but because I built the right foundation. Every acquisition strategy, every tax structure, every deal that made this company what it is. I designed them, I executed them, and I did it while raising 3 children and being told, repeatedly, that I was nothing more than a housewife with a state school degree. I pulled out the photograph, the one from 1992, showing me pregnant and alone at a conference table, signing documents that would create an empire. This is who I was. This is who I am. And this is who I will continue to be. I set down the photograph. I'm not here to destroy what we built. I'm here to rebuild it, with transparency, with integrity, with respect for everyone who contributed, not just the ones who put their names on the letterhead. I looked directly at Howard, including those who were hidden, including those who deserved better. Howard's jaw tightened. He knew what I meant. To the employees of Thornton Holdings, you have my commitment that this company will be run fairly and honestly. To the board, thank you for your courage in supporting this transition. And to my children, I found Lily and Emma in the crowd, then Derek, standing alone near the side door. Thank you for choosing truth over comfort. I know it wasn't easy. I know it cost you something, but I believe it will be worth it. I stepped back from the podium. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. The applause started slowly, scattered, uncertain. Then it grew. By the time I stepped off the stage, half the room was on their feet. Not everyone, but enough. Patricia intercepted me near the bar. "You think you've won?" she hissed. Her perfect composure had cracked. I could see the rage underneath. "You think this changes anything?" "It changes everything, Patricia. Howard will fight this. The lawyers have already seen the documents. They know what I know, and they know something else." I leaned closer. "I know about the properties in Flagstaff, the ones in your name, the ones that were never declared to the IRS. Patricia's face went white. "How did you—" "I spent 35 years managing this family's finances. Did you really think I didn't notice 4 DAOs, $2 million in unreported assets?" I straightened my shoulders. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this ballroom, you're going to get in your car, and you're going to drive home and wait for my lawyers to contact you about a settlement, a generous one, considering the circumstances. In exchange, you will never speak to me, my children, or anyone associated with this company again." "You can't." "I can. I am." I looked at her, really looked, for the first time in 35 years. "You spent decades trying to make me feel small, Patricia. It never worked. I was just too afraid to show it. I'm not afraid anymore." I walked away. Behind me, I heard Patricia's heels clicking rapidly toward the exit. I didn't turn around. I found Nina Vance in the garden. She was sitting on a stone bench near the fountain, a glass of untouched champagne in her hand. She looked smaller than I expected. Not the glamorous mistress I had imagined, but a tired woman in her early 40s, wearing a dress that didn't quite fit the occasion. Beside her was a teenage girl with dark hair and Howard's eyes. "Lauren." I approached slowly. Nina saw me coming and stiffened, putting a protective arm around her daughter. "Mrs. Thornton, I'm not here to cause trouble." I stopped a few feet away. "I just wanted to meet her, if that's all right." Nina hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. I looked at Lauren, 15 years old, a child who had never asked to be born into this situation, who had spent her entire life as a secret, hidden from the family she was technically part of. "Lauren," I said. "My name is Olivia. I was married to your father." Lauren looked at her mother, uncertain. Nina gave a small nod. "Hi," Lauren said quietly. "I want you to know something." I crouched down so we were at eye level. "None of this is your fault. Not your parents' choices, not the secrets they kept, not any of it. You are not responsible for the mistakes adults made before you were born." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "I also want you to know that you have siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. They don't know you yet, but they will, and when they're ready, when everyone is ready, I hope you'll give them a chance. They're good people. They just need time." I stood and turned to Nina. "The trust fund Howard set up for Lauren, it stays. I won't touch it. She deserves that much. But the monthly payments stop. You'll need to find your own way forward." Nina nodded slowly. "I understand. And Nina," I waited until she met my eyes, "if you ever need anything for Lauren, education, medical care, anything that's about her future, you can contact me directly. Not through lawyers, not through Howard, through me." I didn't wait for a response. I walked back toward the ballroom, leaving them in the garden. It wasn't forgiveness. I wasn't sure I would ever get there, but it was something. A door left open, a chance for healing that didn't require anyone else to be destroyed. The ballroom had mostly emptied by the time I found Derek. He was standing near the windows, looking out at the desert, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. He was still wearing the suit he'd put on that morning, but he looked different somehow. Younger, more uncertain, more human. "Derek," he turned. "Mom, I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk to me." "I always want to talk to you. That was never the problem." I walked to stand beside him. "How are you doing? Honestly, I have no idea." He laughed, a hollow sound. "Everything I thought I knew, it's all gone. Dad, the company, my whole career, it was built on lies." "Not all of it. You worked hard. You have real skills. That doesn't disappear just because your father manipulated you." "I helped him manipulate you." "You were used. There's a difference." I put my hand on his arm. "Derek, I'm not going to pretend that what happened doesn't matter. It does. It hurt. It will take time to rebuild trust between us. But I want to try. If you want to try." He was quiet for a long moment. "I saw Lauren," he said finally, "in the garden. My sister. Half-sister. Right." He shook his head. 15 years. She's been alive for 15 years, and I never knew. What kind of family is that? A broken one, but broken things can be mended." I turned to face him fully. "Your position at the company is still under review. The board will decide in 30 days, but I've recommended that you be given a second chance, a different role, less visibility, time to prove yourself without your father's shadow." "Why would you do that?" "Because you're my son, because I believe people can change, and because, despite everything, I still see the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard." I squeezed his arm. "Don't make me regret it." He nodded slowly. "I won't." We stood in silence, mother and son, looking out at the dark desert. "What happens now?" Derek asked. Now we go home, we rest. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. Together. I looked at him, this man who had hurt me, who had betrayed me, who was also the baby I had held in my arms 32 years ago, the child I had loved before he was born. Together, I said, if you're willing. The parking lot was nearly empty when I walked outside. Howard was standing next to his car, alone. Patricia had already left. Nina was gone. Even his lawyers had abandoned him for the night. He looked old, smaller, like a man who had spent his whole life borrowing power and had finally been asked to pay it back. Olivia, he said as I approached. Howard, this isn't over. I know, he stared at me. This woman he had married, controlled, diminished, and underestimated for 35 years. I wondered what he saw now. A stranger, probably. Someone he had never really known. I built that company, he said. Whatever papers you have, whatever the board decided, I built it. You built a story, Howard. I built a foundation. The difference is that foundations last. He had nothing to say to that. I walked past him, toward my car, where Lily and Emma were waiting. Derek stood a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his face uncertain. Derek, Howard called, come with me. We can figure this out together. We can fix this. Derek looked at his father, then at me, then back at his father. I don't think so, Dad. He walked toward us, toward me and his sisters, toward something that might become a family again if we worked hard enough, if we were brave enough, if we were willing to do the hard work of healing. Howard stood alone in the parking lot watching us leave. I didn't look back. The drive home was quiet. Lily sat beside me, her hand on mine. Emma was on the phone with her office, already making plans to extend her stay. Derek followed in his own car, a few lengths behind, close enough to see but far enough to have space. The desert was dark, the stars were bright, the road stretched out ahead of us like a promise. I didn't know what would happen next. The lawsuits, the negotiations, the long process of rebuilding a company and a family. Howard would fight. Patricia would scheme. There would be hard days ahead, but for the first time in 35 years, I was driving towards something instead of running from something. I was making choices instead of accepting them. I was loud instead of silent, visible instead of invisible, present instead of erased. I was free. The house in Sedona was still in limbo. The divorce papers were still unsigned. The future was still uncertain. But I had my daughters beside me. I had my son behind me. I had a company that was finally, legally, undeniably mine. And I had myself, the woman I had buried for 35 years, finally risen, finally breathing, finally ready to live. Whatever came next, I would face it, standing up. The end! If you've experienced something like this, betrayal, erasure, the slow theft of your own identity, I want you to know, it's not too late. It's never too late to reclaim what's yours. Share your story. Someone needs to hear it. And if you were Olivia, what would you have done differently? Tell me in the comments.